Hi and welcome to this week's Retvlog. And is Argus a really bad fight for Ret Paladins? Now, I know what you're going to be thinking straight away. You're probably thinking, why am I even clicking on this fool? Argus is a brilliant fight for us. We do loads of damage on it. Loads of damage. Yes, we do. That's part of the problem. So what is all this about really? Well, it's quite timely because what have we had? We've had the normal and heroic week of Antorus, and then Mythic. We're into Mythic at the moment, the first week of Mythic, and it looks like it's not lasting very much longer for the World First Guilds at the moment. But what we're all sort of expecting is we sort of knew there'd be a little bit of tuning after the normal heroic week before Mythic came out, and that sort of happened. A little bit of class tuning, a little bit of tier tuning. After the first week of Mythic, maybe there'd be another set of tuning. At least a couple of weeks after you would expect that. So at some point there's going to be another little bit of class tuning. Every class and spec is going, ooh, I wonder what's going to happen. Those who are racing at high of the damage meters are going to be thinking, hope I don't get nerfed. Those that are at the bottom or perceive themselves to be at the bottom are going to be thinking, I expect a buff, I need a buff. And will be disappointed if they don't get one. So everyone's sort of hankering after their buffs, or not nerfs at least. And Ret Paladins may or may not be no exception. Now, I'll straight away say here, and I've said this before, anyone who sort of watched me stream or just even watch these will know that I have said that this tier will be good for us. I didn't know that from personal experience before the tier came out. It was just what people were telling me, the other Rets that had been on the PTR and done the raid testing. It's going to be a great tier for Rets. Damn sight better than Tuma Sargeras. Polar opposites. But there is a bit of an issue, and that is that there are some fights that we are really great on. Argus under certain conditions, go over that in a moment. And then there are some fights that we're not so good at, because really we haven't changed a lot since Tuma Sargeras. Our single target is still not necessarily that great. It can be under certain circumstances. What's really good is our sustained AoE. When you've got sustained AoE on a fight, as there are on some fights in this, unlike in Tomb, that was the problem. Heroic Tomb, yeah, no problem. Mythic Tomb, a lot of the AoE you could do, you sort of shouldn't do. That was the thing. In terms of actually getting the bosses killed, you really shouldn't have been doing any AoE on any fight, really. And that was the difference. Whereas in even Mythic Antorus, well, that'll be different things. Your AoE will come in useful. And the fact that we'll be using Greater Judgment with a 2-set tier 21 only sweetens the deal on that one. So what's the issue? The issue is twofold. The first issue is the issue we've had all the way through Legion. This is something that makes it super difficult to tune us. It certainly makes it super difficult to bring us up to a decent level, because it always acts against us, and that is the Retribution passive. We know how this works. The Retribution passive gives us 20% damage increase, also 30% damage reduction, but that's not an issue, for 20 seconds. That's like a DPS cooldown. For a lot of classes, they would regard that as a DPS. Oh, 20% extra damage for 20 seconds? That's a DPS cooldown that I can use, right? No, we get it every time someone dies. Problem then being that, to begin with, when people do die, they don't know the fights. You're getting all this Retribution passive. You're getting all this extra damage. So on a boss, when you're progressing, you generally do pretty well, as long as they're considerate enough to actually die within 40 yards of you. There are fights, of course, where people can die more than 40 yards away, in which case they die and they don't even give you the benefit. That's just selfish. And then, as people get better on a fight and they stop dying, you get close to the kill, you start to get fewer of those Retribution procs, if any, and your damage starts to come down, of course. Now, here's the thing. There are some fights where there isn't really a DPS check. You just sort of kill it. So we know, for example, if Tuma Sargeras with Sisters, Mythic Sisters, you could get really good damage. You'd be like top of the table if it was carnage. There were a couple of times when, even when we were farming it, it was total bloodshed, people dying all over the place, and I did really high damage. Then there were times where no one died, and my damage was sort of middling, and I wasn't doing anything different on either of those fights. It was just down to that Retribution proc. Now, Blizzard said at the start of Legion, the Retribution passive is not going to have any tangible effect. It's not going to affect tuning or balancing. It's just a bit of fun. It's just a bit of flavour. Later on, they did acknowledge, well, okay, maybe it's having a bit of an effect. Really? Is it? Multiple times in a fight, just suddenly getting 20% extra damage for 20 seconds? That's having a bit of an effect, is it? But they said, but nobody's gaming it. Nobody's actually deliberately using this. At some point, they may acknowledge that that is happening. And I am hoping that they at least get rid of the damage portion of it. Just get rid of the whole thing altogether, that'd be fine. But if they got rid of the damage portion of it, we'd still get the damage reduction. That would still fit the flavour theme. And then we'd be good, we'd be fine. But no, at the moment, they don't get rid of it. So the problem is, it's really difficult if they're going to be looking at for class tuning right now. So difficult to tell, because they'll look at us, well, there's nothing wrong with us. But of course, we're benefiting from the retribution passive. And here's another thing. So if there's a fight where there is very tight DPS checks, you're not going to get the benefit from the retribution proc, because you will in the early stages of progress. But if it's a really tight DPS check boss, then that means people basically have to stop dying before you can kill that boss, which means you get no benefit from that. If it's a boss without such a tight DPS check, you can afford people to die regularly throughout the fight, get you loads of that stuff, you'll be riding high. So where is it? Where do we go? Then it comes to Argus. So what am I talking about with Argus? Argus is a huge gimmick fight. Now, I'm not a fan of gimmick fights. There's two big gimmick fights from my point of view in Antorus. There's Eonar, of course, which is just a gimmick fight full stop. Now, that's just the sort of thing I just don't like. Running around all over the place like a blue-ass fly. You're like a little kid trying to get round every ride at the theme park before it shuts. That's what Eonar's like. So that's just, whatever it is. Argus is different. Argus has a double whammy for us. First of all, partway through the fight, the Constellar Designates will appear. These are ads that appear around the room. After a short amount of time, they will develop a vulnerability to a type of damage. One of them, it will be physical damage, and the others, it will be one of the schools of magic. That includes holy. There'll be an ad that takes extra holy damage. So obviously, everyone's going to peel away and attack the ad that takes the vulnerability from whatever is their most damaging ability. So it may be nature, or it may be arcane, or fire, or physical, blah, 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 blah. Now, of course, there's not many that do a lot of holy damage. Paladins do a fair amount of holy damage. Discipline priests, maybe. It's pretty much it. So what you're going to be expecting, if you're in a roster where there's only one Retribution Paladin, you're going to be expecting to be on your ad for a while. You're going to be able to do loads of damage. If you save up your Crusade for it, you're going to be doing even more damage, and you use your pot then as well. Fantastic. Okay? If there's multiple Rets, okay, bad luck, but, it's still something that's taking that extra holy damage. Then in the end phase is designed to kill you. I mean, not only do you use the whole raid die and have to res up, but even after that, it's still a very deadly phase. So you get people dying regularly. If you're not one of them, you are benefiting from this retribution proc. That means that you end up with logs like this. But then what happens when people don't die? Either when you've got comfortable enough with the fight, or your gear's gone up, or so on, so you're not actually dying all the time from it, then you lose out on the retribution passive proc. And here is the problem for tuning, because your damage is dependent upon how you... All through Legion, retribution damage has gone up when the rest of the raid doesn't do well. That's how it works. So in other words, your main damage buff, it's not Crusade. You think it's Crusade, no it's not. The main damage ability that we have as Rets is the stupidity of our raid. That might be a little bit harsh, actually, in the early days when no one knows what they're doing. But that's basically what it is. So when everyone is clued into the fights, all of a sudden you're not getting these procs anymore. That's a massive chunk of your damage gone. And here's the problem. So do Blizzard go, okay, well, a lot of that damage is down to the retribution passive. So do we buff them anyway? How can they? Because when we are benefiting from it, that would just mean we're doing silly damage. No one wants to see anyone. I mean, positioning damage meters doesn't really matter because it's wherever it is. But no one wants to see anyone with a bar that's, a quarter longer than anyone else's at the top. That's really the thing. Like, to see someone consistent at the top, that's one thing. But to see the bar so much bigger, that's something else. And if you buff that, it's going to make that bar even longer. But then what happens on the fights where you're a lot weaker? Well, that's just too bad. So it will be interesting to see what they do about the old class tuning there. But this is going to be a major barrier to them doing anything with it. I'm not saying they need to do anything with Rets, by the way. But it is a major barrier. And it actually puts us potentially more at risk of a nerf than a buff. That's another issue that we've got. So anyway, let me know what you think. Let me know what your experiences as Antorus are. If you think it's been going great, is that because you've been getting a lot of retribution passive? If you go into your logs, look at your buffs, look at your retribution uptime. How is it? How do you think it's going to be in a few more weeks? So let me know what you think. If you've enjoyed the video, don't forget to do a like. If it's first time to my channel, subscribe as well. And until next time, I'll see you later.